Hello and welcome back to Wreaking More Joy for episode 2 of our first season, Rekindle. I'm Janet Dalgleish, and in this season, we're talking about rekindling our romance with our purpose in the world, with the thing that we came here to do, especially when, for whatever reason, that joy doesn't seem to be present anymore, or it's become stifled by circumstance or working hard or whatever it might be. Today's episode, I'm recording this just before the very end of 2025. Episode 1 was recorded and distributed at the December solstice. This is coming at the beginning of a completely man-made celebration rather than an astronomical one. And what's really interesting to me about this period of time is that in the Western world, we are surrounded by people who are closing out the year, planning the new one. We might be doing that ourselves, or we might be trying not to. We're trying to stay on an even keel and not do that stuff. But there is this mass collective consciousness that is all focused on doing it better. Next year, I'm going to be better. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to earn more. I'm going to get more clients. I'm going to help more people. I'm going to have more joy. I'm going to be a better person, be a better version of myself. Whew, it's exhausting just thinking about it. So today, I want us to tease this apart a little bit and see whether there is a more joyful way that we can approach it, whether you are listening to this at the beginning of a new year, at the beginning of 2026, or whether you are listening to this on a random, ordinary Tuesday and you're thinking about what to do with the rest of your week. We're going to talk about something that many, many women quietly live with, this relentless pressure to prove ourselves, to be better. And I am all for growth and expansion. I'm all for the idea of becoming more joyfully ourselves, of being able to do our purpose even more with even more joy and more enthusiasm and also more sustainably. But there's a really insidious brain weasel that can sit quietly in the corner, causing all kinds of twisted versions of this, and it's not helpful. And so it's this jagged little brain weasel piece that says I have to be better because I'm not yet good enough. And we know that it's at play. We know that it lies, and yet it still can be really potent. The first thing I want to say is we are not imagining that pressure to be better. It's out there. It's ubiquitous, and it didn't appear out of nowhere. It's way less powerful, however, if we can drag it into the daylight, where we can name the monster fully and we can examine which parts of it are real and have some kind of usefulness to them, and which parts are hindering our progress. And I have to say, if you're a woman who's alive right now, you are part of a new phenomenon. My mum left her tiny village in the north of England to train as a nurse in one of London's biggest teaching hospitals, the Middlesex Hospital. And for a few years, she pursued her chosen profession, and she did a great job. She got promotions, she got all the things that you would expect from somebody with a thriving career. And as soon as she fell pregnant with me, I was the eldest, she had to stop working. She didn't just choose to stop working, and she didn't have to stop working because of circumstances. She was literally prohibited from working in her chosen profession. I can remember the day in Australia when women were, for the first time, able to get a line of credit without having permission from a man, their father or their husband. This stuff is living history. And in some parts of the world, yes, USA, I am looking at you, I'm so sorry, it kind of feels like we're on the brink of returning to that. So incredible numbers of professions and workplace systems developed in this kind of environment. And some of the professions that we pursue, whether it's medicine or law or entrepreneurship or whatever it might be, these professions are hundreds of years old. But women, structurally, legally, and professionally, have only been part of these systems for the last, I don't know, 60 or 70 years, even less in some industries. And that means whether you're a boomer or Gen Z or anywhere in between, it means we are largely entering systems that were designed not with us in mind, but were designed with only with men in mind, and with men in mind who probably had someone at home taking care of domestic stuff. We know this. But also it means that the criteria for success were designed and defined by men for men. Our presence in these realms has often been conditional upon exceeding the criteria set for men And all too often, we have been the minority in the room, giving rise to this really deep seated feeling that we don't belong. And this isn't personal. This isn't just personal. It means that men get to be individuals in these workplaces while women have to be symbolic. It's kind of like if you did well, it becomes, oh, what a surprise. Women could be good at this. And if you did badly, of course, it's proof women aren't suited to this kind of work. And yes, I absolutely acknowledge that there are some industries where a paid profession has emerged out of work that was previously only done by women in the home. So the caring professions, some of the healing professions, some of those things. In these caring professions that mirrored those old domestic roles, the roles are flipped so that for men, it's that sense of going into those industries can often elicit a sense of, I don't belong in this space. But what's interesting is that in those professions, very often, the leadership, whether they are the leaders in the particular role or the leaders at a level above that, which determine how the role is structured and how it's paid, those leadership roles have still often been taken up by men. I'm thinking about my mum's experience as a nurse. Yes, there was a matron who was in charge of all the female nurses. All the nurses were female back then. But all of those policies were set within the hospital system by a board of governors that was made up of men. So all of these systems around us thoroughly gave us the message, which we absorb without realizing it, because we see it from childhood onwards. We see it depicted in movies. We see it in how our mothers are treated at work. The systems all say we mustn't give them a reason to doubt me. I mustn't be the one who sets women back. I mustn't show weakness or they'll come for me. I mustn't ask for help or I'll prove the naysayers to be right. And nobody ever needed to say any of this out loud. We get this message really subtly all the time, loud and clear. And because we have clever brains, our brains see this bullshit going on and they make coping mechanisms for us. Those coping mechanisms are things like over-preparing, anticipating criticism so that we can prevent it, we can forestall it, taking on more than our fair share of emotional labour, avoiding risk, because we don't want to put ourselves at risk of failing, running a kind of danger scan as a low background hum of anxiety all the time, and avoiding mistakes at all costs. And this can happen even to women who are wildly successful, capable, confident. In fact, I could argue that it's particularly difficult for women in those situations, or it can be, because there is so much at stake. There is so much more to lose. And it's no longer even exclusive to being in the workforce. Ask every new parent about the jackals waiting out there in the comments section waiting to judge. But here, we are talking about our relationship with our own purpose. Our purpose wants us to do what we came here to do to the full extent of our capability. So when you hear comments that say things like one mistake is evidence that people like you don't belong here, or you must prove that you deserve your seat at this table, that's not merely personal performance pressure. That's a kind of existential threat to our well-being. No wonder so many of us operate at full throttle, even in situations where no one is actually demanding it of us anymore, particularly, for example, in our own businesses. So if any of this sounds familiar, it's not because you're lacking in confidence or disorganized or weak or confused, even though you might be feeling that way. It's because you've been so strong, so productive, so competent, so good at what you do, and you've done it in conditions that treat your humanity as a liability. Here's the good news. Yes, there is some good news. This is a brain weasel, and it's usually been hiding in the dark for so long that we don't recognize it as such. Yes, it's true that in many systems and workplaces, an individual woman may find herself having to prove her competency over and over and over again. And that is absolutely enraging, especially given the way that she may well be working with male colleagues who are mediocre. I have been in that situation myself, and it is enraging. But it is also true that you are no longer the first woman in your industry, more than likely. You are not required to carry the reputation of your entire gender. You have more power than your brain weasels like to pretend you do. Because remember, they're coming from a place of trying to protect you from this old system where women were not accounted for or welcomed or given any sense of belonging in these rooms. Your individual situation right now is not a permanent state of being. Change can happen. And you are allowed to seek support, even if your brain weasels are screaming at you to say that that would be dangerous, and especially if your current situation is intolerable. You deserve to feel the joy of fulfilling your purpose in ways that please you, because that joy disrupts those systems that profit from women being tired or self doubting or self erasing. And since this episode is going live with the energy of the new year, I'm going to invite you to add the following as you set your intentions for the year ahead. And of course, you can apply this same principle anytime you're making plans, whether it's for a whole year, a whole quarter, a week, or the following day, because it is so easy to fall into the trap of making a to-do list long enough to choke a horse, or creating a set of standards for improvement that deep down you know are going to be an energy drain or perhaps even feel like a punishment. Ugh. So as you're making plans, notice the places where you might be reacting to that brain weasel. Notice the places where this might be driven by some desire to prove your value. And I'm not sure who you're trying to prove it to, but we know how that works. We know what that feels like. Or where you are adding in pieces that mean overwork and overcommitment, or where you are signing up to accept responsibility that was never yours, things like going above and beyond the call of duty, and where you might be accepting conditions that inhibit your joy. So when you catch that at play, just pause. You don't have to change anything right now. Just pause and ask yourself, is this pressure coming from my actual present reality, or is it coming from a much older story in my own psyche that's living in my wiring, telling me I have to overwork and overcommit? If it's that second one, if it's a brain weasel at play, you can have a conversation with it. You can remind it it's not 1961 anymore. The systems around me might be trying to mimic that, but we're not going to help them do that. We're not going to comply and make it easier for those systems to return us to the 1950s. You can remind it, I am not the first woman in this line of work. I totally belong here. You can remind it, my presence is not on trial here. My relationship with my purpose is not a democracy. I'm the one who gets to choose what it looks like. And I get to be in my chosen career without having to pay for it with my exhaustion. And then let that awareness sink into your bones. Like, really invite that brain weasel to consider all of these things, and then invite it to take a seat at the back of the bus because you're in the driver's seat. It's no longer in charge. And once that brain weasel is no longer in charge, you can then create your future plans with two key criteria in mind. First criterion is, this fulfills my purpose in the world. I love this because it fulfills my purpose in some way. And the second criterion is, this allows me to serve my people or fulfill my purpose in ways that bring me joy. And one of the ways we know that we can increase that joy is by ramping up the compassion. We know that compassion is part of the infrastructure for creating more joy. So thank you for joining me in this episode of Wreaking More Joy as part of the Rekindle season. If this conversation resonated with you, please consider sharing it with another woman who you know might need to hear it right now, especially if she's in the middle of making plans for the future, to help her understand that she's not alone, she's not imagining it, and she's not required to earn her right to exist in her chosen profession, whatever that might be, especially when it comes to planning what's next. And if you're accessing this actually in the week between December solstice and the beginning of 2026, or in the first week of 2026, consider this my invitation to rest if you're tired, ask for what you need, and remember that you do belong. Not because you never falter or because you're perfect in some way, but because you are here, because you keep showing up, you're doing the work with your beautiful, messy human self, and that's a glorious thing. It's a glorious thing. I will see you in the next episode when we will meet one of the most misunderstood planetary allies and explore how this Lord of Limitations can actually help you unleash yourself into true freedom, especially when it comes to your relationship with your purpose in the world.